Hello, I'm Minnie Scipio. Welcome to County Courier. Today I'm talking with Mike Sawyer, who is the Executive Director for the Merrimac Juvenile Detention Center here on the Peninsula. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Mike, can you tell us why the Merrimac Juvenile Detention Center was established?
Yes, ma'am. Back in the mid to late 90s, a group of counties and cities got together and put together the funding and the means to open a detention center for the Middle Peninsula. The Merrimac Center is a 48-bed juvenile detention center that's operated by the Middle Peninsula Juvenile Detention Commission. There was a need for those counties and cities to get together and have a facility to securely and safely detain the youth that came before juvenile court. There were lots of expansions during that time period of juvenile detention centers that has brought us to today's figure of 24 detention centers statewide. There really wasn't a facility located within those 18 counties and cities that we represent to place offenders that came before juvenile court that needed to be securely detained. They had to buy bed space from Newport News or Norfolk or Virginia Beach or even go up to Richmond. And an old buddy of mine's the court service director at the 9th District, which we serve, Tom Gooding. And he tells me tales in the 70s and 80s when we both started of finding bed space from Stanton to Northern Virginia and Southwest Virginia, and transportation and the money involved and the feasibility of doing that was just unbelievable. And so these counties and cities got together and decided, you know, it was time we had our own detention center, along with the Department of Juvenile Justice that also supported a new facility open in this area.
Now you serve, you said the 9th District and
the 15th District.
Now what areas exactly does that cover? I know it's a...
Okay, it's 16 counties and 2 cities. Usually I can name them off pretty easily, but I think I'm going to refer to my cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I hit everyone. I wouldn't want my commission members to be offended, but in a normal situation I'd get all 18. But it's the counties of Caroline, Charles City, Essex, Gloucester, Hanover, James City, King and Queen, King William, Lancaster, Matthews, Middlesex, New Kent, Northumberland, Richmond, Westmoreland, York counties, and the York County and the cities of Williamsburg and Poquoson.
And I would think that the commission is made up of representatives from all of those. Yes,
ma'am. We have representatives from all 18 of those, what we call members, service members, and we meet. The full commission meets quarterly throughout the year, and we have an executive committee, a smaller group of about half that many that represent the full commission at meetings the other months of the year. So we meet at least once. I meet at least once a month with those folks, and then quarterly with the large commissions.
Okay. Where does the funding come from for the Merrimac Center?
Merrimac Center is funded through a combination of funds through the Department of Juvenile Justice, which provides about $1.2 million of our funding. Our budget runs around $3.4 million a year. About $1.2 million comes from the Department of Juvenile Justice through general funds through the General Assembly, and then the other $2+ million comes from the localities, and that's divided up based on how many child care days you use or how many kids you place in detention, based on a per diem amount that you're charged, and all those members of our commission through their localities would appropriate those funds and pay them out as kids come through the detention center.
Okay. Can you explain what happens once a child is arrested?
It's sometimes quite a process. Of course, juvenile offenders are, the juvenile courts, juvenile offenders are courts of no record, you know, and the confidentiality is really key for those youth that come before juvenile court. As I said earlier, we serve the 9th and the 15th districts. And what happens, someone files a complaint, whether it be a citizen or a police officer, or in some cases a social service agency like like social services that would have a CPS complaint and want to do an emergency removal or something like that for the child's safety. But a citizen would come into juvenile intake, the old juvenile probation department, and say, Johnny Jones down the street knocked my trash can over and damaged my car, I want to charge him. And then juvenile intake officer would listen to the facts that they presented. And that's very simplistic, and then determine probable cause. If probable cause could be established, a petition would be written or some other form of either formal or informal court intervention, whether it be diversion or some other program they might be referred to. But if a petition was filed, either as a misdemeanor or a felony, then a trial date would be set. And prior to the trial date, the juvenile intake officer would then, based on instruments and paperwork that they use to determine the seriousness of the crime and a bunch of other questions that are kind of technical that determine whether a kid should be detained or not. And that's kind of where we come in the picture. Mm-hmm. By code, a young person that comes before the court, I'm using the word kid, but youth or a young person that comes before the court has to be found, has to be charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor or a felony to be placed in secure detention. Right. A Class 1 misdemeanor is usually, as an adult, you could receive up to a year in jail and $2,500 fine. So the court process starts, and I'll backtrack a little bit. The court process starts with a complainant coming in, a petition maybe being filed through a detention assessment instrument. The juvenile intake officer would then make a decision on if this child should be detained or not, or could be released to his parents, or some other type of monitoring while he was in the neighborhood waiting for the next court date. After that, if the child's detained, they would come to us, and we would do our intake process and admit them into our facility. Then other court hearings would be set. Within 72 hours of any child that's detained, a juvenile judge has to hear the case and review it to make sure it's appropriate and that laws were followed and appropriate action was taken by the intake officer.
Okay. What type of offense constitutes a Class 1 misdemeanor?
Class 1 misdemeanor could be a larceny, a burglary, an assault. It's a delinquent offense that, as I said, an adult could face either jail time or a monetary fine and some combination of both. Okay. It tries to really separate out the old status offenses where kids were skipping school or staying out late or doing things like that because of their status as a juvenile. It was against the law. Mm-hmm. So we want the right kids in detention. We're there for a reason, to safely and secure detain kids, right. And to provide them an opportunity for services. So we don't want the wrong kids in detention, and this philosophy has changed over the last 30 years that I've been involved in juvenile justice. We don't want to mix low-risk offenders with high-risk offenders. Right. We don't want them to learn things from others that they don't need to learn. So we want the right type of kid in detention that needs to be there because, and a part of this detention, and I do want to add this, part of this detention assessment instrument also takes into consideration the child's threat to himself, threat to others, or his risk of maybe being a flight and not showing up for court. So there's lots of things that are looked at to determine if a child should be placed in detention, because it's a loss of freedom and it should be taken seriously and should be reviewed as it is within 72 hours by the juvenile judge to make sure that his rights were guaranteed and that he was appropriately detained. You
mentioned something about diversion programs. What exactly is that?
For some of the lesser offenses, maybe first-time offenses, we want to meet the child's need where they are and the family's needs. The family's so important to what the juvenile justice system's about, let alone the Merrimac Center. So we want to meet them where they are and provide them the level of care or the level of treatment that matches up with what they need. Diversion programs could be house arrest. It could be electronic monitoring where they wear the ankle bracelet. It could be referring them to other community resources. It could be an essay. It could be a lot of different things, just based on what the charges are, community service, things like that. So.
Okay. What are the demographics of some of the youth that you see coming through the Merrimac Center?
At the Merrimac Center, we probably, about 70 to 75% of the youth that come to us are white. About 25–30% are black, and then there's another Hispanic mix of others, usually 8% or so. So it's generally 65 to 70% white, and that's male and females. Probably the male-female breakdown is we probably have 18, 20, 22%, 25% female, and the rest are males that come to us. Like I said, we're a 48-bed facility. So that's generally the breakdown of
what about youth that are in school versus dropouts,
well,
that type of thing?
Our license covers kids from 7 to 17. And the juvenile justice system, although can actually have a kid on probation or parole up until their 21st birthday, so they can retain that under their purview until the child's 21st birthday. But for the Merrimac Center right now, our license goes through their 17th. Once they turn 18, they have to be moved to jail or be released. Okay.
Mike, I know the goal of the Merrimac Center is rehabilitation. What are some of the services or programs that you utilize to ensure that that you engage youth in positive behavior modification?
We use a combination of behavior modification in conjunction with an evidence-based treatment approach that's called cognitive behavioral training. CBT is the initials that follow that, but cognitive behavioral training, along with behavior modification, really addresses the kids' issues at all levels that we come in contact with them. The behavior modification part is your typical token economy, where they earn points, where they earn privileges through their behavior and maintaining their behavior throughout the day. Now, along with that, if we can also get them to understand how they made those decisions, what was the thought process behind that, what led to them making the good decision. We want to connect the good feelings that came from making a good decision with those thought processes and with the behavior. So it's an approach that hits the kids concretely as they perform their behavior, good or bad, as they make that choice, and then later on addresses it through individual and group work as to why they made those decisions and how they can make them again in a positive manner, or extinguish or avoid those negative decisions that they made.
Okay.
So it's a combination of those types of approaches that the evidence, the what works literature, what we see nationally has been proven through statistical analysis to really work with at-risk youth. And cognitive behavioral training is at the top of the list. And the Merrimac Center is the leader in the state as far as juvenile detention homes and providing those services.
That's great. You mentioned group work. Talk about some of the different groups that the youth are engaged in on a daily basis.
Okay. Excuse me. We usually run 21 groups a week, at least 3 groups a day, 7 days a week. Obviously, we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week facility. So the kids are, the youth charged to us are always involved in some planned activity. Always some constructive use of their time through their school classes and schoolwork, as well as the groups we do. Some of the groups include substance abuse and alcohol addiction, and we do a gender group for females and males to address gender issues. We do groups that involve just daily living and social skills. We do groups that deal with the cognitive impact on their behavioral modification goals. We do social skills group, we do independent living groups, we do parenting groups, we do just everything we can touch on that involves the child and their family and their rehabilitation while they're in the center.
Mike, you mentioned drug and alcohol abuse. Do you see that as a big problem with the youth that come through the center?
Yes, ma'am, we do. I should have mentioned earlier, along with the groups that we were talking about, that we have a mental health staff of 3 individuals, one that's one of our staff that works for us, and 2 that are provided through the Colonial Behavioral Health Community Services Board. And part of what the kids do when they come to us at intake, when we first bring them into the facility, is they're administered an inventory called a MAISY. It's a mental health inventory that looks into depression and hyperactivity and social skills and substance abuse and alcohol abuse, and all these kids are scored out on this inventory to see what potential services they might need. So I would say that probably 45 to 55% of the youth that come through our facilities test out that they need follow-up mental health services, whether it's for emotional disturbance or other serious mental health issues. Probably a similar amount are on some kind of psychotropic medication, and I would say between 45 and maybe 55, 60% of the youth through this inventory indicate that they've tried or have been involved in some type of substance or alcohol.
All right, that's a pretty high number.
Right.
We're going to take a break right now, and we'll be right back.
There's a place, not so far away, a place where you don't have to keep the volume down. You'll find all sorts of creatures in this place without have to. The silly you, the proud you. You may even meet the curious you.
It's tickling me! You!
Ask your parents to take you to this not so far away place. Come to the forest, where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to County Courier. I'm talking with Mike Sawyer, the Executive Director for the Merrimac Juvenile Detention Center. Mike, you work with the schools, I would take it, to ensure that the students are getting the education that they need to.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I have a great team at the Merrimac Center. I've just got to take this opportunity to tell you that I have some of the most dedicated staff that I've ever supervised in my 30-year career in juvenile justice. And they really care about the kids and really do an excellent job. And part of that is the education team that are provided to us through pass-through money through James City County, since we're located in James City County. And we have 8 certified teachers, a principal, and a part-time administrative assistant. They do wonderful stuff. They are right on top of it when the kids come in. And now we're serving 18 localities now, so a lot of different school districts and a lot of different folks you have to coordinate with. Mm-hmm. So, but the kids come in, and if it's a Friday night or a Saturday, then on Monday they jump right on it and get to it right away. But within 24 hours, unless it's a weekend, they pretty much have their school records, their IEPs, whatever they're working on, and they've already scheduled them into the rotation to begin their education. They really don't miss a beat. And as I was telling you earlier, kids come to us anywhere from 2 days to 2 months and longer sometimes. So we're always adjusting what we can do while we have them, while we have their attention. So and the education department really does a great job with that. Mm-hmm. So the kids really don't miss a beat. They're back in their studies right where they're supposed to be, so that any credits they get while they're with us can be transferred back to their home school. If they have, for some reason, been excused from mandatory attendance, then we'll work with them on pre-GED testing and pre-GED studies and prepare them for GED classes and for the GED test. One of the main goals of our principal, and he really lives this, is to, at least if we don't do anything else, we're going to try to improve their reading level. We really challenge them to be better readers. As you know, if you have them for 2 days or 2 weeks, if you can just get them to go back and do more reading, then we feel like that's going to improve the rest of the educational process.
That educational process involves youth that come in that may have dropped out of school as well?
Even if they've for some reason got their GED before they came to us, they're still going to be involved in daily educational classes to continue to challenge them, prepare them for college, prepare them for vocational training. So they're still going to be required, if they're at the Merrimac Center, to attend some type of educational class of instructive classes to make them a better person.
Okay. So. How is the youth's family involved in their rehabilitation?
Well, we want them to be involved as much as they can. We do, when the child comes in, of course the family provides a lot of information, a lot of background to bring us up to speed as to what's been happening in this young person's life. So we get as much information as we can from the family. We want their support as we try to maintain their medication and any mental health issues that they may have, to coordinate appointments and things like that. And then finally, when they're ready to leave, we want to try to, as much as possible, coordinate their release and plan for their transition back home, especially with our post-dispositional kids that stay there longer with us and are working on different goals than our pre-dispositional kids.
Okay. What happens to a youth that comes in that may have committed a serious crime or may have anger issues? Are they segregated from the rest of the juveniles?
No, not really. They certainly would be tapped for anger management instruction and counseling, and would be involved in our anger management group as one of the groups that I was telling you about earlier. Now, they would be identified as being a more serious offender, and things like considerations would be made, like maybe not double bunking them and things like that. But basically, we want to evaluate them as they do as their behavior is impacted with us, and make a decision on what we do in response to that. We're well aware of the serious nature of their offenses, and safety and security is very important to what we do there. It's our number one priority, and as much as we can combine treatment and education and other services, we're going to do that. Safety and security is really the number one thing we have to worry about. So we do look at that, and we do take that in consideration. And as part of the intake process, I should also add that we separate young people by age and crime and size and mental capacity and a lot of things, so that usually your 15/16, 17-year-olds are in one unit or one pod, and the 13, 14, 15s are in another. And of course, girls are kept in a separate unit, and then our post-dispositional program in another unit.
Okay, good lead in. What is the post-dispositional program? Explain that to me.
Okay. At the Merrimac Center, it's called the DAY program, Developing Alternatives for Youth. Post-dispositional youth are placed with us by the courts, and are done so because it's allowed through the Code of Virginia as an alternative to commitment. Juveniles that are committed by the juvenile court would go to one of our juvenile correctional centers, the Beaumonts, the Culpepers, the Bonairs, those type of programs, and usually most Virginians have heard of Beaumont, and it's been around a very long time. But as an alternative, based on this code provision, as an alternative to commitment. Now, these are kids that have 4 misdemeanors or felonies that they've accumulated, and would qualify to be committed to one of the juvenile correctional centers. As an alternative, they can remain in the community in their juvenile detention home. Beaumont is west of Richmond and south of Richmond. It's an hour and a half out. Culpeper is about 2.5 hours away. So this way they can stay, even though they've been committed, they can stay in the Juvenile Correctional Center at Merrimac in our post-dispositional program and still receive the same counseling services, the same educational opportunities, have the family support, and serve their time, so to speak, at the Juvenile Detention Center. So these kids these kids that are identified for post-dispositional placement can stay with us up to 180 days by code. Now their placement is reviewed every 30 days by the juvenile judge. We prepare a report and give progress to the juvenile judge so he can send them back to us for more treatment and more programming. Mm-hmm. So these kids do stay with us longer, and during this time, it's really for the 17-year-old, the older child that is really preparing for some type of independent living, even if the family's involved in that independent living process. So that these kids are finishing their GEDs or getting their diplomas, they're learning vocational skills, they're job searching, they're opening bank accounts, they're saving money, they're understanding what it's like to rent an apartment or a room somewhere, to find transportation, to find community resources to help them. Mm-hmm. So they're building this up as they stay with us during those 6 months and can transition very easily into the community and be successful, hopefully, because of the ability for them to stay locally in our juvenile detention center and receive these services by the folks that they're going to go back to anyway. So it's a real plus for kids that have this opportunity.
Right. You can hardly pick up the newspaper now or turn on the news without seeing something about budget cuts. What do you see as one of the major issues facing the juvenile justice system today?
We have lots of serious issues that face the juvenile justice system. I'm very passionate about it, so you may have to rein me in a little bit, but I've been doing this for a long time, for over 30 years, and right now it's probably the toughest I've seen it in a very long time. Budget cuts have really impacted the services to juveniles. Like I said earlier, we have $1.2 million that comes to us through the Department of Juvenile Justice, and thank goodness it comes to us to relieve some of the pressure and the costs the localities have to bear with other budgetary burdens that's been placed on them because of the poor economy, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. But if you believe in helping kids, if we believe as a community, as York County believes that we need to address the issues of our citizens, and I'm speaking for all 18 localities as well, you know, the human infrastructure, that counts too. The kids and the families and social services and mental health, you know, to me that's just as important as roads and highways and bridges. And so often it gets overlooked. And because there has been a decrease in juvenile crime, and because budgetary restraint has had to be implemented, I think we get left out sometimes. And it really increases the pressure on the localities to step up and provide the money that's needed for kids to come to the Merrimac Center or to get other services that they need to become successful adults. So it's pretty critical out there right now. So it's something that I'm concerned about, but I've got such a great commission board, and we have so much support from the localities that they're standing strong and really providing what we need to operate the center like we should.
Well, that's good. I hope it continues.
Thank you.
Where is the Merrimac Center located?
Merrimac Center is located on Route 143. It's called Merrimac Trail 9300. It's just inside, if you're coming up 143 and leave Newport News, it's just inside James City County. It's near the regional jail on the same site there. So
okay. It's
almost in the city of Williamsburg as well.
Okay. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming and sharing information about the Merrimac Center. That's our show for today. I'm Minnie Scipio, and thank you for watching County Courier.